Hi there, this is Jonathan Ginsberg, and today I'd like to talk to you, give you a case study about a recent scleroderma disability case that I tried here in Atlanta. And I had a client who was a younger individual. She was in her late 30s, and her past work had pretty much been as a waitress. She had done mostly food service. And about 5 or 6 years ago, she started noticing some tightening in her skin. And scleroderma, if you don't know, is a connective tissue disorder. I believe it's autoimmune, where the skin begins to just tighten up and lose all flexibility. And by the time of this hearing, which is about 5 or 6 years after the diagnosis, she was literally in a wheelchair. Her hands were clawed. She couldn't open her hands. She had bed sores. She was very, very thin, no muscle tone at all, and she had basically broken open bed sores all over her arms and her shoulders because she just really can hardly get out of bed. And so when she was wheeled into the hearing room, I felt like we had a pretty good chance at winning. Usually when your client's in a wheelchair, that's usually a sign the judge is probably going to be pretty receptive to what you have to say. But what we had to prove was that her onset was essentially 4 years ago. And of course, you know, her condition now was clearly disabling, but 4 years ago really wasn't. And the issue I had to deal with was that her date last insured, which means the date that her Title II disability ran out, was in December of 2007. And I'm trying this case in April of 2011. So you're literally looking at, you know, almost 4 years ago. And so fortunately what we had in our case was a hospitalization where she'd been hospitalized for complications. She was still walking at that time, but the doctors did notice that she was having some esophageal problems, having difficulty swallowing, which is a symptom of scleroderma. She was having difficulty holding things, gripping things, terrible itching on her hands, which again is a common symptom, and that her ability to, the level of pain she was in was quite severe. They actually prescribed morphine at the time, which is, pretty significant if they're going to prescribe morphine. She was on, I believe, prednisone, which is a steroid, other steroids, and so forth. So the medical record was pretty clear that even back in 2007 when she was hospitalized, that was kind of when everything started to really go downhill. And she testified that thereafter she lost the ability to walk continuously. She started using the wheelchair, that she was developing the bed sores, that she was in significant pain, and so forth. But the judge really had to show that, or had to convince himself that her condition back in 2007 was even 40 or 50% of what it is now. And I think he was satisfied about that. But the thing was, during the hearing, my client was testifying, and even you can tell because of the medications, her mental state is not what it once was. She kept talking about her recent situation, what was going on in 2008, 2009. The judge kept having to come back and say, okay, I understand that things were really bad in 2008, 2009, but what was going on in 2007? And finally, she was able to talk about 2007 and what happened right after her hospitalization. I think one of the important things to pull from this is that you as the claimant need to be very aware of what is called your date last insured. And what that means is that there's a certain date when your Title II disability credits run out. And if you remember, the definition of disability is the inability to engage in substantial gainful activity because of a medical condition or conditions that has lasted or expected to last a year. But you've got to show that it came within, and you, in order to be insured for Title II disability, you've got to work essentially 5 out of the last 10 years. So obviously when you stop working, if you've been working full time, your insurability will follow you for about 5 years. You'll remain insured because, again, 5 out of the last 10 years, logically you stop, you've got another 4 to 5 years before your insurability ran out. So we have to meet that definition of disability before insurability runs out. In her case, her husband worked, so she wouldn't qualify for SSI. So I tried to explain it to her, but again, it was very hard to really communicate because she just was sort of out of it. But when you're dealing with this, whether it's scleroderma or anything else, be aware of your date last insured. And if you have a date last insured that is not that's already run. In other words, if you're applying for disability and your hearing's in 2011 and your date last insured was in 2009, be aware you've got to prove that your disability began back in 2009, and you've got to be prepared to testify that your condition was significant and severe prior to that date last insured having run. Your attorney will explain this more, but again, it's just important to be aware of some of these dates. So scleroderma, again, is a condition where once it gets to the point where you're unable to grip, your hands are clawing, you're dealing with significant itching, and you're on significant pain medications like morphine or methadone, that's a pretty good chance that you're going to be successful. But again, sometimes depending on the date you apply, the date last insured could be an issue. In this case, the judge was receptive to it. He was very open to helping this person. Some judges aren't like this, and he was very patient with her and allowed her to testify and drew out the testimony to show that her condition was really, really severe back in 2007, which is what we needed to prove that she qualified for Title II disability. So that's what happened in this particular case. It was successful. I think scleroderma is a condition that frequently will be disabling, and again, it's the good basis for a disability claim. It was here. I certainly hope you don't have it. I hope you don't. If you have it, I hope it's not severe. But if it is, I encourage you to apply for disability, and I think that you'll find most judges are going to be pretty receptive to it. So this is Jonathan Ginsberg. Hope this has been helpful, and we'll see you soon.